So my name is Nick and I'm the Director of Education with Mercy for Animals. Is everyone here familiar with MFA's Great Work for Animals? So I'm just going to go through this really quickly and just give a few short, quick, practical tips that hopefully all of us can use to be more effective advocates for vegan eating in our own lives, with our family, with our friends, with our neighbors, with the public. So first is something that Erica touched on very well, and that is about, if we want to do the most good for animals, there's so many issues we can work on, there's so many causes we can work on, there's so many campaigns we could work on. Vegan advocacy is just one of those campaigns, but it's important to keep in mind just how important vegan advocacy has been, and just how many animals have been spared a lifetime of misery, thanks to those of us in the room today and others not here doing this sort of work. So these are very rough numbers, but if we look at the number of animals being spared by the great work being done around vivisection, fur, companion animals, wild animals, animals in entertainment, again, this is a very rough number, but give or take about 1 million animals a year. Now that is fantastic. Anyone who can put their efforts together and spare 1 million animals a year, that is phenomenal. But as Erica pointed out, if we look at the number of farm animals that will be spared this year, and next year, and the year after that, as a result of diet change, it's about 500 million animals. So not only do farm animals represent the greatest amount of suffering, and the greatest number of animals who are being tortured and abused and killed, they also represent the greatest opportunity. So if we want to do the most with our limited amount of time and money and energy by focusing on farm animal issues, and by focusing on good, pragmatic vegan advocacy, we can do the most good possible for animals. I'm going to show here the decline in meat consumption. Even the National Chicken Council, which obviously is not the most vegetarian-friendly organization, is showing in their numbers that meat consumption is indeed dropping, has dropped by about 10% in the past few years. So moving on, the best request. Obviously, we would love everyone in Los Angeles, in the United States, and around the world to go vegan tomorrow. But we know that that is probably not going to happen. So when we're encouraging people to make dietary changes, we need to think about the impact of these different changes. So one of the things I wanted to do recently was I wanted to try to figure out, okay, we eat different animals. I wonder how much suffering the average American omnivore causes to animals and to different types of animals. So I looked at the different animals that we Americans eat, not we, but we in the grander sense, and how many days each of those animals suffered before being killed. Suffered on factory farms, in battery cages, gestation crates, and so forth. And so this is what it turned out to be. There's obviously not numbers here, but you got to get a general sense that when we look at the days of animal suffering caused by the average American meat eater, nearly all of that suffering, over 96%, is caused to just two species. Chickens, either chickens in egg-laying facilities or chickens on broiler farms, and fish. And by the way, this is just farm animals. This isn't even including all the wild fish and other wild animals. But for farmed animals, 96% of the suffering that is endured for American taste buds is endured by chicken and by fish. One other way to look at this is how much good the average American can do by switching to a different diet. So by going vegan, of course, you'll spare 100% of the farm animal suffering that you would otherwise be causing. By going vegan except for dairy, again, if we're looking at the number of days of suffering, you'll spare 99.6% of that. Vegetarian, 89%, no fish or poultry, 84%, and no red meat all the way down at 4%. And even that is optimistic, because this is assuming that people don't replace those products with other animal products. So those who do cut out red meat, because many of them replace it with chicken, they may have a net negative impact for animals. So what does all this, what all these statistics mean, practically speaking, for us as vegan advocates? Well, if we're speaking to someone and where you would love them to go vegan or at least go vegetarian, but they're not necessarily willing, but they're willing to take a first step, one great first step they could take is simply cutting out chicken, or cutting out chicken and fish. Just by doing these things that are definitely a lot easier than going all the way vegetarian, at least right away, they can spare about 85% of the suffering they're causing. It's a great first step, it is a first step, but it's a first step that can do a huge amount of good for so many animals. One other thing I want to talk about is the importance of showing people how to make changes. All of us here today, we know how badly farm animals are abused. And we want everyone else to know how badly they're abused as well, because we think that if they know, then they'll make a change. If they just see why to go vegetarian, why to go vegan, the benefits to animals, the benefits to our health, to the environment, to social justice, and so forth. If we just show them why, then people will make the change. And of course the why is important, but because we have this mindset with a lot of our work, we often neglect to show people how to make these changes that we would like them to make. And I think one of the reasons for that is that if we're doing vegan advocacy, chances are we've been vegan ourselves for at least a couple months, if not a couple years or beyond. And we forget that things that seem easy to us, because we've been doing them for a long time, can seem next to impossible to someone who has never done them before, right? So we need to show people how to make a change. We need to leave them feeling like they know how to make these changes. There was a really important so-called meta-analysis that came out a couple years ago. It's called a meta-analysis because it looked at over 200 studies on behavior change. And the goal of these researchers was to find out what is the biggest predictor of whether or not someone is actually going to change their behavior. Now, not surprisingly, it found that attitude mattered. So people who wanted to make a change and thought it would be a good change to make, they were more likely to go ahead and make this change. The surprising thing is that that was not the biggest predictor of whether or not people ended up actually changing their behavior. The single best predictor of whether people would make a good change was whether or not they felt they had the ability to make that change. So we need to leave people feeling not just that they want to go vegan, but that they know how to do it. And if we look to the research, if we look to the studies and the reasons why people say they are not going vegetarian, not going vegan, we see there are 4 main barriers that people perceive to be standing between them and an animal-friendly diet. So if we want to be effective at showing people how to make these changes, we have to address these barriers. And so here they are. So the first and most important barrier is taste. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how anyone could look at a block of cold, wet, gelatinous tofu and not think that that is the most mouth-watering, delicious thing they've ever seen in their life. But apparently, some people disagree with me, and they think that vegan food might not taste that good. Or they worry about giving up the foods and flavors and textures that they know and love. So taste is the primary concern. So we need to show people that there is delicious, delicious vegan food out there, and where to get it. Second biggest concern, health. There is a growing number of people, with each year there's a growing number of Americans who see vegetarian and vegan eating as a healthy thing to do. But there's still a significant percentage of the population that sees it as an unhealthy or potentially unhealthy thing. So we need to make sure that people know how healthy you can be as a vegan or as a vegetarian, and also we need to show people how to address potential health problems that could arise. Now, the biggest health concern that people have is probably one that all of us have heard probably 1 million times by now, and that is, where do you get your protein? That is, in fact, the biggest concern people have. So we need to show them where they can get their protein, where they can get their iron, how they can be as healthy as possible while still having a compassionate diet. The third barrier that people face is convenience. People feel they don't know where to go to buy vegan food, what restaurants they can go to, what options they can have when eating out. So we need to show people where to buy these products, what restaurants to go to, how to find vegan options at fast food places and other chains. The more convenient we make it, the more likely people will be to make these changes. And fourth and finally, social issues. People worry that if they're vegetarian, if they're vegan, and they're out eating with their family or their friends, it's just going to be awkward. It's going to be a subject of some kind of tense conversation. There may not be options for them. They don't really know how to handle those situations. So we need to give people good, easy, pragmatic advice to how to deal with these sometimes sticky social situations that we all encounter as vegans and vegetarians. Now, one of the reasons it's important to show people these hows is not just to help people make the change, but to help them stick with it. Because the very unfortunate reality, if we look back at the data, is that for every 4 people today who say that they are vegetarian, at some point in the future years, 3 out of those 4 people will go back to eating meat. Wow. It's very unfortunate. Now, the good thing is that most of the time they eat less meat than they used to, so there's still some positive benefit. But the fact is that there's a huge percentage of people that are going back to eating meat. And the more we show people how to make these changes, how to make it easy, delicious, convenient, and healthy, the more likely they will be to stick with it and continue to be helping animals. The last thing I want to talk about is not so much a specific way of speaking to others or a specific thing to say, but rather a certain advocacy tactic that has become available to us just in the past few years with the birth of social media. You know, in years past, if you wanted to get video of factory farm cruelty in front of the public, you had to print out hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of ugly, big, blocky, expensive video cassette tapes and give them out to people or sell them to people or hold a little video screening for 5, 10, 15 of your friends. Today, you know, Mercy for Animals can do an undercover investigation, or Compassion Over Killing or another organization can do an investigation and get footage of factory farm cruelty in front of hundreds of thousands of people in just a few weeks. This is an incredibly powerful way to reach people. And you may be thinking, okay, this is great that COK or MFA or other organizations can do this work, but I can't really do that. But the fact is that we can, and there's one very simple, very easy way we can do it with our donor dollars. So organizations like Mercy for Animals and others have begun doing advertisements on Facebook. So when you log in, instead of seeing the latest status update from your friends, you see a status update from one of our organizations, exposing the cruelty being done to animals, maybe talking about a celebrity that people are fans of and how they have gone vegetarian, offering a free vegetarian starter guide. We can put these ads in front of people. We can put it in front of huge numbers of people, millions of people, and drive them, if they click on the ad and want to learn more, to that video that we all know is so powerful. That video footage of cruelty being done to farm animals. We can offer them resources on how to go vegetarian, how to make the switch, and how to stick with it. It's super easy, it's super cheap. It costs about 15 cents for each person that you drive to these sites and expose to this really hard-hitting video and to these really great resources. So I think everyone here probably has 15 cents. We probably have a lot more. So if we really wish that if only more people would see what's going on, they would change. We can make that happen. We can pull out our checkbook, we can make a donation to one of the organizations doing this work, and we can get this video, and we can get these resources in front of huge numbers of people. And you know, it works really, really well. These are just a few examples of the comments that we get every day from people who have seen the ads, have seen the video, and their life has been changed as a result of it. So this is what every one of us in this room can make happen with just, you know, a little support to the organizations doing this work. So that's pretty much it. Thanks again, and thanks for all the work you're doing for animals.